I'm not acting like I read 3.5 million documents. Just based on what I've read so far, I actually owe a lot of the conspiracy theorists I know an apology. GIB, it's very hard for me when it comes to the everything's connected people, you know? Because not everything feels connected. You know, you'll have people who are like, it's all connected. It's all connected, all right? All of it. Jean Benet, 9/11, and the tiger that went missing at the zoo. It's all connected. That's the other thing about my friends who say it's all connected. They stare, and it's like if you would blink, I might be on board quicker. But the way that you can't just tell somebody, even if it's a fact, even if you're telling somebody the truth, you could be telling somebody the full truth. If you stare, it does take them out of what the truth is. You gotta stop. You might tell someone a fact, a thing that they know to be true, but if you stare afterwards, you kill your own momentum. You could be looking at your friend. It's Tuesday. Do you see how I don't care what day it is for a second?
That is the reality that is confronting all of America, which is yet another week, more redactions from Trump's Justice or Injustice Department, and we still cannot comprehend really the full implications of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The American people in the world is confounded by what's happening. And many nations, frankly, in Europe, to be very specific, are taking their own actions to hold elected officials accountable while we keep dithering here. But members of Congress are frankly doubling down. I believe we'll hear a little bit about what happened when Pam Bondi showed up to render testimony, if you can call it that, to Congress. But here is Representative Melanie Stansberry from New Mexico, who took the time to go over and review some of the files that are made available now for members of Congress in unredacted form. I should also say there are only 4 computers available to these members, and they have to review these files in a specific designated area with 4 computers for 435 members of the United States Congress. Let's roll the clip.
The United States government is engaged in an active cover-up of the largest trafficking scandal and influence peddling scandal in the history of the United States, and Donald Trump is right at the center of it. And the person who is living to provide the evidence, who knows what is going on, is trying to invoke the Fifth to buy her clemency. Donald Trump is not only named thousands of times in the latest release from the Department of Justice, he is named over 38,000 times in the files that were released 2 weeks ago alone. And we know that that only represents half of the files that the Department of Justice has in its possession, including files that were used for direct investigations of perpetrators, people who committed crimes, people who were co-conspirators in those crimes, and individuals who knew of those crimes. We know that there are multiple administration officials, including Howard Lutnick, Elon Musk, who served as the appointee for the DOJ efforts in the White House. We know that the Secretary of Navy. We know that Steve Bannon. We know that there are more than 36 associates, family members, and individuals directly associated with Donald Trump named in those files.
And of course, you all know Ghislaine Maxwell this week gave testimony. Well, showed up, appeared digitally to give testimony to where Congress, and basically said, I plead the Fifth. On every single thing she was asked. And some of y'all may say, well, of course she would plead the Fifth and not say anything, except she had all the words when the Todd Blanche, former personal lawyer to the president and second in command at Justice, decided to fly down to my hometown, Tallahassee, Florida, and interview her. She was unstoppable and all that she had to say for 2 days, y'all, but had nothing to say to the U.S. Congress by way of accountability.
That's not all the way accurate, Andrew. She said that she pled the Fifth. However, However, she would be willing to talk if they
there's
granted
that.
her a certain level of clemency. And so she ain't have a
better
lot
get
to
outta
say
here.
to your point, but she was like, if y'all give me my free, I will gladly tell you what I need to know. I just want to compliment, and I don't know how many times on Native Land we've actually done this, but in the 100 and however many episodes, I did want to compliment a conservative Republican, Thomas Massey. Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna have been pushing the envelope on this issue for a very long period of time. And if we don't praise people when they do right, they just ain't gonna never do right. Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna, and Ro went to the well, and for legal purposes, my next quote is directly for legal purposes for all of those who are watching it. It is not a thoughts or concerns or verbs that have come from Native Land Pod. However, he did mention that there are 6 individuals whose names are co-conspirators, unindicted co-conspirators from the well where he had the protection. And I'm just quoting him, so I should get that same protection. But Salvatore, Nuara, Zurab, Mekhelades, Leonov.
I'm telling you one thing, y'all reading them names the same way. My God.
Because he couldn't pronounce them either. Nicola
I know,
Caputo.
that's my point.
I know this one, Sultan Ahmed bin Saleem. I don't know. But I do know the last one.
My
Leslie
God.
Wexner.
If we can, Nick, if we could just put the names up and put them in the show notes for everybody else, because we don't know what Bakari just
with
said.
a note that says read at your own risk.
Look, I tried. But listen, those 6 went without any punishment. But as we all know, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So Ro Khanna and Thomas Massey from Native Land and Bakari Sellers, thank you. Keep doing that good bipartisan work on behalf of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein.
Keep doing the right thing.
That's real.
Right,
and
Lee.
Bakari, while you had some names that were difficult to pronounce, make sure y'all pay attention in the show notes. There are names that we all can pronounce based off the Epstein files, who were may not have been mentioned in the documents as unindicted co-conspirators, but based off their actions, their emails, their words themselves, their communications with Jeffrey Epstein, which have come into the light of day, there's no conceivable reason why there were not legitimate charges levied against many of these men in power who fully and knowingly procured the services of underage girls, children, solicited, procured those services, and somehow this Justice Department, along with 5 other Justice Departments under bipartisan administrations, chose not to bring charges.
Let me just also say, let me just say something real quick.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, I wanted to clarify something just real quick. Everybody that I named wasn't associated with pedophilia. However, everybody that I named was associated with trafficking women and throughout the world. And I just, so there has been a legitimate question with Jeffrey Epstein about blackmailing, pedophilia, and sex trafficking. Those are, for legal purposes, those are 3 different things.
Absolutely.
For moral and ethical purposes, it's all up. So I just wanted to clarify that those people aren't. There was one torture video associated with one of the individuals of a minor, but for some of it, it wasn't necessarily pedophilia. It was equally as bad. It was sex trafficking. Yeah.
I want to flag for the audience again, one of the names that has been named that wasn't listed as a co-conspirator. Donald Trump 38,000 times is quite damning, just as damning as all of the felonies he was indicted for prior. But I will just say this. One thing I'm fascinated by, 2 things I'm fascinated by. It's a lot of nasty ass people out here. I'm not trying to pass judgment, but y'all nasty. Like, you doing the most. Casey Wasserman is in some email asking Ghislaine Maxwell when he was going to see her in a tight-ass leather outfit. Like, Casey, what you doing, bro? Like, they going to let you stay?
Oh, the 2 names that surprised me. First, the OBGYN, who is like the lead OBGYN at Ohio State, that was mysteriously he was getting $25,000 a quarter, and he was sending packages down there to him, which is wild on its face.
Yes.
And the other thing is Deepak. Now,
Deepak, what?
Deepak.
Deepak.
Now, I'm all about enlightenment.
Nigga, what you doing?
He said
I was about to
life. That's
What'd you say, Kevin?
He said in an email to Jeffrey Epstein, and I think it's like 2013. He's like, I had the time of my life last night. I think people keep forgetting that like Jeffrey Epstein was a known pedophile in 2005.
Yeah.
No, Deepak said God is a construct, and then said girls are cute. I was like, Buddy out here.
Let me I gotta say one more thing. This ain't gonna age well for me.
Follow your flesh every now and then, but don't be preaching no spirituality to me in books and then be out here dancing with baby.
Because I was about to say, which Deepak? There's so many, but I know now.
You know what? Maybe it's a sign I'm not supposed to say it.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, Angela.
Chopra and Oprah rhyme. And Oprah.
Anyway, we cutting that out the show.
No, we're not. Because why? Like, here's my only thing. It's actually a question. I don't think that she did anything. She's not in the files. I'm not suggesting this. My question is, for someone who spends so much time in, Super Soul Sundays and the many ways in which she is tapped in and discerning, what happened with the discernment around Deepak, Dr. Phil, and Dr. Oz?
Oh Lord!
And I really want to know.
I see what you're saying now, but that's a tangent. We talk about that.
It might be a tangent, but I really want, and I really want to hear from. Like, I'm not being funny. I really want to hear from her on if she's like, man, it was a miss, bro. I really, I got them wrong. I really want to hear how because I would be heartbroken, right? If there are people that I'm putting on as like, these are folks who I am uplifting as extremely talented that I'm going to lend my platform to. And the many ways in which they have embarrassed, like, the legacy of what Oprah Winfrey stands for. I want to know how she feels about that. Like, it's one thing to be a dummy and you went to support another party. It's another thing to be a dummy, be appointed by the person that runs that party. It's a whole other ass thing to be a spiritual guru messing with little kids.
We don't know that part.
I said allegedly.
No, but I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. Like,
why he say girls?
I mean, you can't.
At the very least, he's a hoe. So maybe he's not a pedophile,
right. Well,
but Deepak seems to be a hoe as evidenced in these files. So I'm just wondering and I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not throwing shade to Oprah. I love Oprah. I want to know how she feels about this. I would be mortified.
That's fair.
I hope she says something publicly.
I feel that.
I agree.
But I will say in redemption,
but I
at
don't know
least
why
for her
you want
public.
to. I wasn't saying Chopra and Oprah rhyme, so she's in the files. I'm saying Chopra and Oprah, which brings me to my next question. How does she feel about this?
There are 2 points really quickly. I wasn't saying that. It was a very, very close segue between pedophilia, human trafficking to Oprah Winfrey.
Accusing
I was like, I don't know where we're going. That's
on the good side, Bakari, she did come out and campaign against Dr. Oz for the U.S. Senate.
She did.
That's true.
Thank you.
I'll give her that.
They said I was wrong.
Can she just tell me how she
You may have to call her up. I don't know.
She's not going to pick up my call on this, I don't think. Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.
Epstein worked for intelligence, and I'm not going to say who it was, but it was Mossad. I can't say it too much. I don't want to get into legal trouble. Let's just say he enjoyed massages. He was not good to women. He was a misogynist. Don't hate me for delivering the message, okay? I'm going to prove it formally tonight. I had the privilege of taking an accounting class in college. Anybody here take an accounting class? Oh, equal number of people on both sides. You got the debits on the left, credits on the right. You learn about this thing called the accounting equation. Very creative name. Assets equals liabilities plus equities. The total assets of a person or a company is equal to the sum of all the liabilities they have, the debt plus the equity they have, the stock. That's a little life hack if you want to increase your net worth. Rack up a ton of debt and sell stock in yourself. Epstein, he got rich all of a sudden after his teaching job, because it doesn't pay apparently. And he became a consultant, which is not a real job. I'm sorry, guys. If that offends any consultants in here. Talk after the show, you can bill me after. Great business model you have. This is when he started to be introduced to very high-profile people. One person he notably worked with, Adnan Khashoggi, a figure in Saudi Arabia, worked together to finance the Iran-Contra affair, where Israel was funneling weapons into Iran to stir up a regime change, which is not relevant to now at all. He had to work directly with Israeli intelligence, so clearly he was introduced to Mossad. He got even richer when he met Leslie Wexner, the CEO of Victoria's Secret, which a perv would want to work with. Leslie Wexner had a lot of stock with Israel and Israel's economy. When Epstein started to work with him, he suddenly got a lot richer. Then Epstein was introduced to Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's accomplice in the whole sex trafficking scandal. And they say Ghislaine's in jail. I don't even think Ghislaine's in jail. I actually bumped into her at the store last week. She was like, "Pardon me." I was like, "No, thank you." Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the daughter of Robert Maxwell, a known Mossad asset. He died of natural causes, mysteriously fell off his yacht one day. And suddenly Epstein got very rich shortly after. So again, nothing to see here. We know that the money he used for this operation was leveraged by Israel. At the same time, he became acquainted with a lot of very powerful people who were associated with Israel. For instance, former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak. Not Ehud Barack Obama, that's a different. He was actually seen many times on camera approaching Epstein's apartment and walking in, and he would always wear a mask. And this was pre-COVID. This was trying to hide. This guy got caught on camera going into Epstein's house only to be recorded on more cameras. Also, Bill Clinton. A lot of pictures of Clinton with Epstein. It's not a good look. Clinton, obviously, very tied to Israel. He was brokering all those deals in the 90s. Alan Dershowitz, who's Israel's lawyer, also Epstein's lawyer. All of these people, as soon as they started hanging out with Epstein, Israel started to distance themselves because these people posed a reputational risk for Israel, which says a lot. If you're threatening Israel's reputation, you've really f***ed up. Here's why we know that Epstein was an Israeli asset. Epstein got all of his money having stock in Israel. And he knew all these people who were liabilities to Israel. And liabilities plus equity equals assets. Epstein was an Israeli asset. I know, there's a lot of information I'm accounting for.
Of the Jeffrey Epstein scandal. Now, as part of our investigation, we spoke to Ari Ben-Mashani, who is a former Israeli spy. He said on the record unequivocally that Jeffrey Epstein was working for Israeli intelligence operations, the Mossad, and running a classic honey trap operation. That is, lure people inside, record their activities, and learn about their peccadillos and use it to blackmail them. This is a former spy on the record in the new book, Epstein, Dead Men Tell No Tales. Interestingly, this person was also the handler of Jeffrey Epstein's best friend and ex-girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. She was said to have been one of the women who helped procure the underage girls for Epstein. She has denied that. But her father was Robert Maxwell, a media and press baron who owned the Mirror News Group in England and also the New York Daily News. He was a former Mossad agent. And according to my source, Ari Ben-Mashari, the business that Robert Maxwell had was turned over to Jeffrey Epstein almost in a switch before Robert Maxwell died in mysterious circumstances off the back of a boat in 1991.
Well, this is mind-boggling stuff.
Parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files
I reclaim my time.
be
I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Mr. Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation. This is
time
belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of crime. I'm showing you. Here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop a limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we say here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims, and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has...
हम सभी पे लाठीचार्ज किया गया। जिस तरीके से हम लोगों को रोकने का कोशिश किया है, क्या उनको लगता है कि हम युद्ध शांत हो जाएंगे?
The whole House will be disgusted by the latest revelations about Jeffrey Epstein. All of us want to see his victims get justice. But the political decision to appoint Epstein's close associate, Peter Mandelson, as Britain's ambassador to Washington goes to the very heart of this Prime Minister's judgment. When he made that appointment, was he aware that Mandelson had continued his friendship even after Epstein's conviction for child prostitution?
Simple question. Mr. Speaker, let me start where I must with the victims of Epstein, and all of our thoughts are with them. Can I also say our thoughts are with all those who lost jobs, savings and livelihoods in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crash. To learn that there was a cabinet minister leaking sensitive information at the height of the response to the 2008 crash is beyond infuriating. And I am as angry as the public and any member of this House. Mandelson betrayed our country, our Parliament and my party. Mr. Speaker, he lied repeatedly to my team when asked about his relationship with Epstein before and during his tenure as ambassador. I regret appointing him. If I knew then what I know now, he would never have been anywhere near government. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, yesterday, the Cabinet Secretary, with my support, took the decision to refer material to the police. And there is now a criminal investigation. I've instructed my team to draft legislation to strip Mandelson of his title and wider legislation to remove disgraced peers. And this morning, I've agreed with His Majesty the King that Mandelson should be removed from the list of Privy Councillors on grounds that he's brought the reputation of the Privy Council into disrepute.
I'm going to say something about the Epstein files that a lot of y'all are not going to like. The only reason that the Epstein files has the power to topple the world is because a lot of y'all genuinely believed that the elite would never treat white people the way that white people collectively treated black people during slavery. Slavery wasn't black people being forced to work a job they didn't care about. It was people being forced to work until their muscles would fall off of their bones. Black people would be tortured for just funsies. They'd be medically experimented on with no kind of anesthesia. You know how throughout the South, even today, it seems like every other pastor and peepaw is touching on kids? Well, that is a cultural stay from when white people used to own black children. Do y'all honestly think that a master is going to wait until a slave turned 18 in order to assault them? It's better to break them in when they're young. But if it was really that bad, why weren't there more slave rebellions? There were slave rebellions throughout the South, constantly. The only reason why you only know about Nat Turner is so that way everybody can point and be like, oh my gosh, look at him, he's so crazy. He started killing these white people because he thought he had messages from God. Even after slavery ended, whenever a black person would be lynched, a lot of the times the white people who did it would literally sever off some of their body parts and keep them as mementos. Black people would be skinned, and then their skin would be turned into human leather, so that way it could be used for leather goods, like coin purses, or the binding of a book, or a bag. There is not a single thing in those files that has not been done to black people before. The problem isn't that elites are doing those kinds of things. The problem is, bro, I thought us white people, I thought we were in this together. I thought we were a team, man. So keep in mind, as above, so below. The elites told non-elite white people, hey, here's a group of people who we deem as worthless and y'all can torture them and do whatever the hell you want with them. And they'll have like little to no recourse whatsoever. And white people collectively, we were like, cool. The trade-off is that the elites also got their own group of people that they could do whatever the hell they wanted to with little to no recourse. The problem is that group of people was you and me. It was pretty much anyone who wasn't part of the elite. White people collectively made a deal with the devil. Here's this group of people that you can violate and brutalize to your heart's content, and in exchange, we get your humanity. That's why white people are miserable and constantly in black people's business. That's why for pretty much at least the past 100 years, any kind of cultural artifact that's really stayed and stood the test of time has been from black people, often just with a white face on it. And that's why, by and large, white people were so disturbed whenever Renee Good was murdered, because we've seen that hundreds of times before, but that's supposed to happen to black people, not to us. And a lot of white people are acting so disturbed because now they're killing our neighbors, but you didn't particularly care whenever your neighbors were dying during the Black Lives Matter movement, now did you? But in the past couple of months, now a lot of white people are waking up to a really obvious reality, and that is black history has always been white America's future.
There's a particular reference Epstein makes to Africa, and he says, I do a lot of work in Africa, and he refers to Africa as fertile ground for experimentation. And so it turns out that Epstein was a major funder of this weird artificial intelligence lab being created in Ethiopia that's tied to this scientist who's overtly transhumanist that he funded extensively named Benjamin Goertzel. Goertzel is, for example, head of Humanity Plus, formerly the World Transhumanist Association, which is an entity that Epstein funded in addition to funding Goertzel's own work. And Goertzel is also the chief scientist at Hanson Robotics, which has produced these human-like robots, the best well-known probably being Sophia, the robot that was, for example, granted citizenship by Mohammed bin Salman at a time when one of his close advisors was Jeffrey Epstein. Again, very, very odd activity there. So as far as what was going on in Ethiopia, at the time that Epstein was investing in this AI lab, and backing Goertzel, Goertzel was teaming up with this blockchain company called Cardano that's pretty well known in the cryptocurrency space. And they were specifically seeking to offer digital ID. Well, it's already happened. They gave a digital ID essentially to 5 million Ethiopian school children with the intention of expanding that. And the whole intention of this is to harvest data from these children. They explicitly say that. So, and even in other documents, Goertzel essentially says that this data is being used to feed, the AI that powers robots like Sophia at Hanson Robotics and stuff.
As Americans, we've sort of equated money and any form of success with intelligence. We have sort of built up a meritocracy that doesn't exist. And so we see someone, if they have $1 billion, we're like, oh, they must deserve $1 billion. If they have more money than we could ever imagine, they must have earned it somehow. They must be so smart that they just put it together. And maybe I'll be just like them one day and I'll be able to put it together. And maybe I can work my way up to get to their level. And one of the things about reading these emails that should be apparently... It should be so clear to you when you read some of the correspondence between these people is that these billionaires, these tech bros, these elite cannot spell. They cannot spell. They cannot spell. They probably cannot spell. They cannot spell. It is crazy. It's hard to read. It almost gives them some plausible deniability. If they were brought into court and told to read what they wrote, they might be like, I don't know what this is, to be honest with you. I don't know.